Okay, so what I would like to do is I'd like to show you how to create a template or a pattern for your tower. What we have to make sure of is that there are rules that we do not violate in order to be able to compete, but then we can create just about anything we want inside that template. So I'm going to show you really quickly how to do this. You do need some graph paper, and the smaller the squares the better, but you definitely would like centimeter graph paper over inch graph paper. But the smaller the squares the better, just because it's easier to try to stick within the lines and get your accurate measurements. Now what I did is up in the corner, so I wouldn't forget, is I turned around and I reminded myself that the height for this tower needs to be 20 centimeters, the top needs to be 5 centimeters, and the base needs to be 10 centimeters. I'm creating a pattern for one side. You might use a tower that has 3 sides or 4 sides or as many sides as you want, as pretty much with a basic minimum of 3. But this is a pattern for one side, and then we're going to create many sides. Now for me, the easiest thing to do is to start out with height, and I typically pick about the middle line of the paper, and I pick about the bottom. So I started about the bottom, and I mark my bottom of my centimeter, and then I'm going to go all the way up to 20. Okay, now what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to do 20 and a half, and in fact I'm going to go ahead and pick this other intersection right up here, even though it's a little bit more than 20 and a half. And the reason why I'm going more than 20 and a half is because I know that it needs to be at least 20 centimeters. So if it needs to be at least 20 centimeters, I don't want it to be shorter than 20 centimeters. So I'd rather sacrifice some of the weight of the tower and do half a centimeter over than to do under and not be able to compete. So I'm gonna go a little bit more than 20 centimeters because I don't want to break that rule. Okay, and remember, it has to be at least 20 centimeters. Okay, now the base I'm going to go to next, which has to be 10 centimeters. Now again, you can make it a little bigger than 10 centimeters, and as you get to learn your towers, you might be able to make it a little bit smaller, but remember that it has to span a 10 square centimeter opening, so we need it really to be at least 10 centimeters. So I'm just going to go ahead and go with 10, and I'm going to see how it breaks. Okay. So I'm going to line up my bottom little dot right here halfway from 0 to 10. And that way I know that I'm going to center my tower here. And you definitely want your tower centered. If I started here, then I'm going to end up with one side that's straight and the other side that's angled. We want to have an equally angled tower on both sides. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to set my little dot to the center. Okay. And you'll notice that again that the lines don't match exactly. So it's okay if I go just over on the base. So I like my little squares. It helps me to see exactly what I'm doing. Okay, so now I'm just going to use my ruler to connect the line. And you want to stay very accurate. This is one where you don't want to play around too much. Make sure your paper doesn't move. If you have to tape it to the table, then tape it to the table. Okay. So now I've made my base, and I know how tall my tower needs to be, but I also need the top. Now remember, the top is a little bit trickier, and the reason why the top is a little bit trickier is because it needs to be 5 centimeters or less. So the base can be 10 centimeters, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. The height can be 20, it has to be at least 20 centimeters, so we can do 20 centimeters or more. But the top has to be no more than 5 centimeters. So because of that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to center it right here. And I am actually going to go a little less. So, I mean, I can go about half a centimeter on each side. Now I know that right now it looks like it should be 4 centimeters. Yep, right about 4 centimeters. Okay, and again, you could go out a little wider if you wanted to, but I know that when I put my little block on here that my block is going to fit. And now I'm going to connect the dots. Remember, 3 dots make a line. We like the 3 dots. Okay, so now I know where the top of my tower is, and I know where the bottom of my tower is, so now I'm going to connect it. And this is one where you don't want to freehand it. You want to use your ruler. Use your ruler whenever you can because you don't want to mess around with this. and you want to make sure that your tower is perfectly symmetrical. Remember what that means? Symmetrical means that if you were to fold it in half, one side would be the exact same as the other side, one on top of the other. So I should be able to fold it right along this little line where we started, and I should have a completely symmetrical tower, okay? Now at this point, I know that this is where my tower has to fit. So I can do lots of things with it. I could choose that I don't want a base. I could choose that I'm just gonna try this with no supports. Or I could choose to start making some supports. So let's pretend that I want to make a Z pattern, okay? And I wanna go, and I like my little squares and lines, okay? And so let's say that I wanna go from here to here, and then I wanna go from here to here, and then I want to go from here to, I don't know, how many did we go here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11 squares. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 squares. So if we really wanted to, we could go down one, or I'm going to cut it off one, and then see how many are below. 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh yeah, so I definitely want to go down 11. Okay, so now I'm going to connect it again. The only thing that you'll find out is that if you want to make an X patterns don't work with pasta very well. Z patterns work pretty well. So notice that one I'm a little low. I don't like that. And then I'm going to come here. And then I'm going to come here. And again, make sure to use your ruler. Do not just freehand it and draw the line. So now, when I make my tower, I'm going to use this as my pattern. And I'm going to make sure that my pasta, that one side of my tower looks like this. And whenever I make my pasta, I'm going to follow this pattern. I'm not going to look away from it. I'm not going to do anything extra. I just need to follow this pattern as best I can. And then that way I know that my tower will be symmetrical and sturdy. Thank you.